It all went a bit mad when I think the root of the trouble is that a lot of people in the Welsh independence movement think that everything else is permissible so long as you believe in independence. So you can believe terrible things, but as long as you're on board with independence, it's okay with us. However, a lot of other people don't think that's okay. Indie first and sort the rest later can lead to an ideological viewpoint that's quite culty. So anything that varies from that. Like when people want independence for specific reasons, such as believing that Wales is a more forward thinking country than Britain. For example, some of us think that equality would be better enshrined in Wales than in Britain, and that minorities would be better off. So some people believe that socialism could be better achieved through independence. These are all valid viewpoints, but a lot of people see anything that isn't pure independence, whether good or bad, as a problem, which is nonsense, really, because that's not how you reach people. So I think that was a bit of a blow to maybe pure nationalists, and nationalism can lead to bad things, just as it can lead to good things, as history shows. And in some cases, it has a particularly hostile attitude to minorities at the moment. That's what happens from several years of Tory rule. So we are seeing terrible anti-migrant, anti-asylum seeker and anti-refugee rhetoric, but also anti-LGBTQ plus, specifically anti-trans rhetoric. And it's one of the worst Western countries for it. And people in the Welsh independence movement oppose others in the Welsh independence movement espousing this. Got white supremacist blogs written by people in the Welsh independence movement, and these people shouldn't be in the movement. They should be ostracised for their racism, anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric, and this nonsense. They shouldn't be welcome. So people oppose this. And a lot of people who are otherwise decent people turned a blind eye to this because the people doing it believed in independence. A certain committee member from Yes Cymru had complaints raised about that anti-LGBTQ plus rhetoric, and people lost their minds. The conspiracy theories started. The movement was being taken over by socialists. The movement was being taken over by gay people, trans people, the woke, the same fascistic rhetoric you see in all far-right movements. People who seemed pretty normal as a product of lockdown maybe fell down the rabbit hole and got lost in this barrage of hate, and it became relentless. The conspiracy theories went and went and went. The Central Committee were hounded out over nonsense and conspiracy theories in the real world, as well as on Twitter. A lot of people have seen this. A lot of people are getting hundreds of abusive messages a day, as well as anonymous phone calls, harassment, and people who normally would have stood up to this didn't. It became a really unpleasant place to be. I'm not trans, so people have had it far worse than me, but it was just despair that we were having such a nonsense and made up debate about problems that do not exist. Trans people have existed for forever, and we can make up as much shit about them as we want, but it's all nonsense, and it's not just something that we should be debating. We shouldn't be debating people's rights. We don't do that with other communities. The trans debate was a distraction, but it wasn't because of the trans people within the movement. It was purely because of the anti-trans people in the movement making shit up about them. It's just a culty conspiracy theory.
My name's Lena Farhat. I'm a Twitter user, and I am active within Welsh politics. I was previously a member of Yes Cymru. I joined in 2015, and I left, I think, that same year because of my skepticism around how the organisation, which was then quite small, was dealing with equality and diversity issues. In terms of 2020 and how things escalated, the organisation grew quite rapidly. And I found that quite a good thing, because it signalled to me that Wales was ready to start having that constitutional conversation, not only around independence, but also how we fit in within the union, what we think our rights within the union should be, and if that is independence, how do we get there? So that was quite exciting at the time. But I kept challenging members of the organisation and kept trying to keep the organisation on its toes. And that then turned into a lot of vitriol on my end coming at me. So it very much snowballed. It started off with just people disagreeing, probably under my tweets, to my tweets being sent around for certain people to disagree with them in bulk. And to then people sending me direct messages, DMs, with some pretty hateful stuff. A lot of threats of sexual violence, a lot of threats regarding my race, regarding me being a Welsh speaker, regarding the political beliefs that I hold, and what I said, to then friends having to message me at all hours saying people are trying to look for your address. That separation between the real world and what happens on Twitter, which, when they start to cross over, gets a bit weird. And I think the lockdown exacerbated that, because people weren't going outside, people weren't really interacting with the real world. So really the only way we were interacting was on social media.
A lot of us don't want anything to do with it anymore.